Lunch hour at Naval Station Everett was usually a deafening mix of shouting and clattering steel. It was the sound of hundreds of sailors letting off steam. But the moment the double doors swung open, the volume dropped. A woman stepped inside wearing generic workout clothes. Her hood was up, casting a shadow over her eyes, and her uniform bore no patches, no name tape, and absolutely no rank insignia. She moved through the line with the silent lethality of someone who had survived combat zones that didn't appear on any official map. Most of the room ignored her, assuming she was a civilian contractor or a lost dependent. Everyone, that is, except the SEAL platoon occupying the center table. They were fresh off a deployment and overflowing with adrenaline and ego. At the head of the table sat Chief Petty Officer Stone. He was a man who measured respect solely by the stripes on a sleeve. He watched her carry her tray to an empty corner, his eyes narrowing. Why would a civilian be so comfortable in a room full of apex predators? Stone decided to find out. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the remaining chatter. "You forget where the guest entrance is? Where's your uniform?" A few of his men laughed, nudging each other. The woman didn't react. She didn't even pause. She simply sat down, back straight, staring at the wall ahead. Her silence was an insult he couldn't handle. Stone stood up, kicking his chair back. "I'm talking to you, sailor, or are you too scared to speak up?" The entire cafeteria went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. Finally, she looked up. Her expression wasn't fearful. It was completely empty. It was the 1,000-yard stare of an operator who had seen things Stone couldn't imagine. "My rank," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "is not your concern." The audacity stunned the room. Nobody spoke to a chief like that. Stone's face turned a shade of crimson. He walked toward her, closing the distance with aggressive strides. "Listen here," he snarled, looming over her table. "The only people on this base without visible rank are either lost recruits or escorted VIPs, and I don't see a security detail. You have 3 seconds to identify yourself before I have security drag you out." She didn't flinch. She just took a sip of water and offered a cold, humorless smile. "Chief," she replied, "you don't possess the security clearance to demand my identification." Gasps rippled through the mess hall. Stone leaned in, his nose inches from her. The violence in his eyes was palpable. "Try me," he whispered. Suddenly, the main doors burst open. The sound was like a gunshot. A 2-star admiral and a Marine captain marched in, scanning the room frantically. Every sailor jumped to their feet. The officers ignored everyone, making a beeline straight for the woman in the hoodie. Stone froze, his heart hammering in his chest. The admiral stopped in front of the table and snapped a crisp salute. "Ma'am," he said, the respect in his voice unmistakable. "Apologies for the delay. The Situation Room is live." The blood drained from Stone's face so fast he looked like a corpse. The woman stood up slowly, picking up her tray. She looked at the admiral, then turned her gaze back to the chief. The silence in the room was absolute. "Next time," she said, her voice ice cold, "never mistake quiet for weakness." She walked past him, flanked by the high-ranking officers, leaving a room full of hardened warriors paralyzed with shock. As they moved down the corridor, the admiral handed her a tablet. Colonel Vance, her true code name, didn't need the escort for protection. She needed them to clear the path. "The team is ready?" she asked, not breaking stride. "Yes, Colonel," the captain replied, "though we have a problem. The SEAL element assigned to us is volatile." She stopped. "Volatile? They just tried to pick a fight with their new commanding officer in the cafeteria, the captain admitted, looking nervous. They didn't know it was you. Good, she said, resuming her pace. Fear teaches better than lectures. Minutes later, inside a secure briefing room, the lights dimmed. A topographic map of a hostile mountain range appeared on the screen. The mission was Black Ops, off the books and highly dangerous. Colonel Vance stood at the head of the table. The door opened and the SEAL team filed in. They looked different now. The swagger was gone. Leading them was Chief Stone. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. When he saw who was standing at the head of the table, he stopped dead. It was the woman from lunch. "Take a seat, Chief," she ordered. Stone swallowed hard. "Colonel, about earlier, I had no idea." She silenced him with a raised hand. "You weren't supposed to know, but your job is to assess threats, not create them. You failed that assessment today." The room was suffocatingly tense. "I don't need your apologies, Chief. I need your competence. Can you deliver that, or do I need to find a new team leader?" Stone straightened his spine, desperation in his eyes. "We are ready, ma'am." Then gear up. Wheels up in 10. On the tarmac, the wind whipped around the Black Hawk helicopter. The team loaded in with a newfound discipline. There was no joking, no ego, just focus. As Colonel Vance strapped into the jump seat, she looked back at the men who had mocked her just an hour ago. "Listen up," she shouted over the rotor wash. "The enemy doesn't care about your rank or your reputation. They only respect precision. That is why I am here." As the bird lifted into the gray sky, Chief Stone looked at his commander with a mix of terror and awe. They realized then that they weren't just on a mission, they were being led by a ghost. And for the first time that day, they were ready to listen.